Why do people use metaphors? A communications professor might say that they are rhetorical figures of speech meant to achieve an analogous effect. But if they are merely a means to an end, why do artists, authors, and musicians spend so much time creating metaphorical associations of an endless variety? I believe metaphors are not just analogies, but instead windows into different perspectives. Having an insight on these perspectives can create new dynamic ways to think and solve the problems we encounter. This presentation is one interpretation of the dynamic interaction of the global economy via the metaphor of plate tectonics. Plate tectonics is a scientific theory that describes the large-scale motion of the Earth's tectonic plates. The Earth has 7 or 8 major plates and many minor plates. In my model, the tectonic plates are represented by the regional economic blocks of the global economy, such as the European Union, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Arab League, the Union of South American Nations, and many more. The relative interaction of these plates determines the type of boundary that they have. There are 3 types of boundaries. First is convergent. These boundaries move into one another and create geographical features such as mountain ranges. Second, there are divergent boundaries. These boundaries move away from one another and create rifts and valleys, such as the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of the world's ocean, as well as the Luterbrunnen in Switzerland. Finally, there are transforming boundaries. Instead of pushing together or pulling apart, these boundaries horizontally move alongside one another. An example of transforming boundaries is the San Andreas fault line in California. These boundaries are representative of the types of interactions that are experienced by the regional economic blocks, and the geological forces that are consequently formed by these interactions. The geological forces model the drivers of international business, such as foreign direct investment, global sourcing, and multilateral governing bodies, such as the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund. Let us explore some of these boundary relationships with real-world interactions. First, an iconic historical example of transforming boundaries: the mutual competitive growth of the post-World War II Soviet Union and the United States. These ideologically opposed countries grew together in separate directions. The friction from the competition of these two economic superpowers created many political conflicts, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War, similar to how the friction of the San Andreas fault line causes massive earthquakes throughout California. Next, let's switch to a more modern example of divergent boundary interaction with the Eurasian Economic Community. Due to Russia's hostile nature over the recent Crimea conflict, many of the countries in the EAEC have begun to move away from Russia. The rest of the world's trade blocs have also begun to distance themselves from Russia, with sanctions and abrasive political dialogue. The rift between the rest of the world and Russia is getting larger and larger, very much like the Mariana Trench. Finally, the most iconic example of convergent boundary would be the collusion of almost every regional trade bloc to form multilateral governing and financing organizations, such as the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, and the International Monetary Fund, creating tremendous global entities comparable to the colossal Himalayan mountain range. This metaphorical interpretation of the global economy is a template which can be used to compare future geopolitical conflicts with the natural phenomenon of plate tectonics. And it's also another perspective at looking at the way the world economy interacts. Thank you very much for your time.